Sunday. By popular demand, we have our affirmation today. Okay. There we go. Okay, let's say it together. Consciousness is everything. I raise my consciousness today to see the miracles and wonders of life. I commit myself to behave with greater love, compassion, and kindness towards all human beings. Great. And that means all human beings. So many interesting things. First, I'm looking for the book that we usually read. The little piece from Karen Berg, Finding the Light in the Darkness. We sold them out. So there's no books here. So I think, okay, what am I going to do? What are we going to do now? So I go into my library in the office, and I think, you know what? I haven't looked in this book. Let's see if it'll work. So open it up. This is called The Way by Michael Berg, who's now the current director of the center. And of course, it fits exactly with what we want to talk about. So he says like this: imagine that a close friend has suddenly been stricken by a severe illness. Clearly, he is suffering. And according to Kabbalah, we are all ultimately responsible for our own pain. Should we then tell our friend that his predicament is his own responsibility? On a spiritual level, this may be true. But the more real question is, what good does this judgment do? How will it benefit him in the midst of his suffering to hear that he is responsible for it? Passing judgment on the spiritual causes of others' distress brings neither them nor us closer to transformation. Instead, our first responsibility should be not to judge, but to lend assistance. A person in pain needs relief, not moral reflection. A homeless man needs shelter, not philosophy, however well informed it might be. Unless we are certain that our judgment will help another person towards their transformation, it is best to say nothing and to take positive actions towards relieving the immediate distress. Often, the simple act of non-judgmental listening is the best thing we can do for anyone. The whole purpose of spirituality is to become more conscious of the needs of others, more sympathetic, more caring. So beware of the road that leads you in the other direction, towards judging others harshly. This is not a true spiritual path. So again, as he says, it is true. Everything is cause and effect. We all know that. We all understand it. And especially what you and I learned from Kabbalah 1 forward, how to realize that everything comes my way, no matter how painful. My soul basically wrote the script for all the actors, meaning the other people, all the circumstances, and for me to be there. Now, it doesn't exempt other people from their negative behavior, but it's the beginning of our taking control and responsibility for our life so we can control our destiny. So if you think about how many of us are feeling confused, we're feeling chaotic, we're feeling discouraged, we're feeling even maybe a little bit of hopeless, helpless, about some of the stuff going on in the world. You look at the world and you say, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And if you're over 40, just checking, if you're over 40, we can see it's getting worse and worse. Yes, as the Zohar says, there's a better side coming along also. But from the side of darkness, it's getting more and more intense than ever in my lifetime. And I'm a few years over 40. And then you look historically, of course it's worse. Simple terms. As we grew up, because I believe, most of us here are over 40. When we were young, what did they talk about that was global? Think back. Nothing was global back then, right? In the 60s, 70s, nothing was global. The last thing was we'd say World War I, and technically that wasn't even global, right? Yeah, it covered a lot and it was very destructive, but it wasn't the whole world. Now, from probably, maybe the mid-90s, suddenly everything's global. Everything is global. The last year and a half, how do we see that? Even in a stronger way? we're all in it together. They didn't just say just the United States and Europe and South America. We're all in it together. So we're seeing what we understand, and that's what I wanted to start out with. This idea, what does it mean we're all in it together? Why? How come we weren't all in it together in World War II or Vietnam or Korea War or World War I? They call it World War I. Why World War I if it wasn't everybody? So you and I learn, even those of you who just go by the Bible, right, which we're also going to get into, open the first chapter of Genesis. After the 7 days of creation, as we're coming into the physical world, what does it say? There was one human being. Wasn't Adam and Eve. They were not the first. Read carefully Genesis 1. It says there was one being that was both male, female. Then chapter 2, we have the beginning of the Garden of Eden, and we have, as it literally says, God reached into this being, took out a bone, let's call it, and created Eve. So now you have Adam and Eve. But as we understand from Kabbalah 1 forward, the Creator in the endless world created one vessel. We call it one soul. What is the soul? It's a vessel for the light of the Creator. So in the endless world, the Creator created one infinite vessel, which is the soul of that one being, filled it with the light of God. And when we came into this physical world, we took on physicality. Then split into Adam and Eve. Then split into Cain and Abel, and on and on and on and on. But if you really think about it, there was one being that was the source of all humanity, spiritually. My mind is going there, so I will share with you. Even those people who hold the idea of evolution, even if you think evolutionarily, okay, and please don't try and give me all the, tiny details, understand the concept. If a person looks at the idea of evolution, first there was just the oceans, and then the ocean developed one protein, and the protein became this and this and this and this. Eventually you get a human being. So even from an evolutionary standpoint of view, there had to be the first human being. You and I understand, the Bible's telling us. So there is only one, and like in a family, if you think of a family, if you have 10 brothers and sisters that come from one mother and one father, are they all the same? Even if you don't have 10, maybe you only have one. We're all different. I had 5 brothers, I have 4 because I'm the 5th. 4 brothers and sisters. We're not the same. We come from the same parents. So we come from the same source, if you will, but we all have different talents, abilities, likes, dislikes, perspectives on life, beliefs about the world, etc. Should somebody come along and say, no, Chaim, you and all your siblings have to believe identically to your mom and dad. Imagine what would happen if they said that to you. Some of you go, maybe I wish. Some of you going, okay, I could manage. And probably some of us going, no way. Right? No way. Okay, but one set of parents, mom and dad. So understand the same thing spiritually. We come from one creator that created one soul. The vessel contained the light of the Creator. Then we came into this world. And as I read to you from Michael Berg, then we are responsible for what goes on in this world. God is not. No, God empowered us like our parents. Ideally, your parents train you, give you education, encouragement, whatever it is, and then you go out on your own. And what happens after that is you. We can no longer say, oh, but my parents made me this way, or that way. How come? How come we can't say that? Because some of us have. But is there nobody that you know, is there no aspect that you have overcome that? Where your parents may have taught you one way, and for whatever reason, you decided, no, I'm going to go a different way. I'll behave differently. I'll act differently. I'll have a job, a different profession, something. Did we not all in some way or another not follow, and not in a bad way? Maybe they wanted us to be better than them. Like I want my kids to be better than me. You follow? So we've all been able to do that. Some people, that's how they hold on to being a victim. What can I do? That's how my parents made me. No, can't do that anymore. The purpose of life then, as we're now getting the idea, so that one being, split into Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel, on and on and on, that one being, that one soul, that's really what I want to get across. One soul that now is extended into 8 billion bodies. The point of spiritual work, the essence of being in this world, spiritual evolution is how to bring all those pieces together, how to bring those pieces into unity. Because like some families with 2 or 3 siblings, certain circumstances will come along and suddenly all the siblings fighting with each other over money, over how to take care of the parents, over what to do with this, that, or the other thing. No, our job is uniting back as one. Back as one, so we can be back in the Garden of Eden, which is in essence heaven on earth. So I'm going to read to you what I think, and it's my opinion, is the most important verse in the Zohar and the essence of the Kabbalah Center. It says like this. If you want to look it up, it's verse 90 in the portion of Naso. And he says like this, and I'll just read you the English. It's quoted from the book of Daniel. But the wise shall understand, since they are from the side of Binah, which is the tree of life. So he's saying the wise people come from the tree of life, beyond illusion, beyond negativity, beyond anything of a negative nature. For them it is said, and they who are wise will shine like the brightness of the heavens. Again from the book of Daniel. And here's the key. He says, with your composition of Rav Shimon Bar Yochai, which is the book of the Zohar, which is from the light of the supernal mother, called repentance, which Kabbalistically means the ability of repairing every form of negativity. They do not require a test. And because those who believe in mind over matter, those who are believing, well, in essence, what we're teaching here, we are responsible, everything is cause and effect, we have that parasite in our head, it's our job to express all of the light of the Creator and be united, love your neighbor with everybody, and because they will, in the future, taste from the tree of life, which is this book of the Zohar, they will leave the exile, meaning all the chaos, pain, and suffering, with mercy. Because it will hold about them, so did the Creator lead them, and there was no strange God with them. So he makes it very, very clear. It's the book of the Zohar. He doesn't say the study, he doesn't say the wisdom, he doesn't say the learning. Now, obviously, the center's mission is to teach people Kabbalah, but towards the goal of having us understand, as we're going to talk a little more detail, that this thing we call a book actually radiates the endless light of the Creator. So we have the wisdom of the Zohar, how to evolve, what life is about, that we're all one soul, we have came out of the endless world, all the things we learn in Kabbalah 1, ultimately how to do what? Bring all the pieces together and achieve peace on earth. Why is there no peace on earth right now? Let's not even go that far. How many of us have some kind of discord with just one person? Some kind of discord. So means there's no peace. Why is there no peace? Because for whatever reason, those two people, me and them, you and them, whatever, are not united. Are not united. And again, that doesn't mean you all have to agree on the same thing, but there has to be a form of unity. Like the old saying I grew up with, you can disagree, but don't be disagreeable. That's still unity. You have your opinion, I have mine, but we can still love each other, work together, etc., etc. But you have your opinion, I have mine. Fine. So the Zohar is not trying to take that away. What it's giving us, as we often speak about, it's this wisdom, it's the blueprint of the universe. It's the system of the soul. So then let's ask, what about the Bible? Whichever Bible you read, whichever Bible you grew up with, right? Holy book, yes. Every one of them. Holy books. But they're all written in code. I always we used to give introductory lectures, years and years ago. So I also used to bring people to the awareness. A couple simple things that show us about about the Bible. And again, it's not to say it's not holy and it's not helping us to learn how to live, but let's see this. Start off right in the 7 days of creation. There was evening and morning day 1, evening and morning day 2, evening and morning day 3. How do we usually judge the morning and evening? The sun is out, is it night or day? Day. When the moon is out, night. But the sun and the moon were not created till the 4th day. So how do you have morning, evening, and morning, evening, day for 3 days if there's no sun and the moon? Okay, that's one, simple. Now we start to get to a little tougher part. And that we'll also see how people, sadly, all of us over history have misconstrued it. 10 Commandments. As far as I know, every religion on earth holds by the 10 Commandments. Okay, other things may have difference of opinion. 10 Commandments. What's one of them? Thou shalt not murder. Yes, we all know that one. So you read in the book of Exodus, thou shalt not murder. Shortly thereafter, as it's written, God is commanding Moses, when you enter into the land of Canaan / Israel, wipe out every man, woman, and child. Besides the fact that sounds horrible, and it's putting a very bad reputation on God, but how could it be, thou shalt not murder, and then that same biblical God commanding Moses to go murder? So, the parasite we call the adversary, right, the opponent, that's that parasite in our head, what did it do with that verse? Along history, every religion decided God told them to wipe out other people and commit some kind of war, because the Bible says it. So you and I come to understand, as we learn in the Kabbalah Center, as the Zohar teaches us, those Bibles are a code. They're a code. So like in World War II, when that side or our side wanted to send messages to the troops, how did they send them? In code. Why? Why in code? So the other side couldn't understand. Was there an original message that was being sent out, or they just liked writing code? Silly things. There was original message that was encoded. So the Kabbalists teach us the Zohar is the original message. It is the universal message of the soul. And then it's encoded in the Bibles, the holy books. So the Zohar unlocks the code and gives us the original message. How to achieve love your neighbors yourself. Everybody says love your neighbors yourself, but how to do it? If you like chocolate chip cookies, like I like chocolate chip cookies, if nobody's around to make them, and there's none in the store, and I want chocolate chip cookies, I can go into the kitchen and I can just start throwing together flour and chocolate chips and sugar and this and this. Am I really going to make a chocolate chip cookie? What am I missing? The recipe. If I don't have a recipe, I don't know how to mix things together. And it could turn out worse. So the same way, if we don't have a recipe, step by step, how to manifest peace on earth, love your neighbors yourself, unconditional love, etc., we can all try, but look at 5,000 years of history. Hasn't worked. Do you see peace on earth? Do you see harmony among people? No, I don't see it either. So now the question, because I hear it coming, why is it in code? Why are the Bibles written in code? A few different reasons, but let's just sort of make it simple. When something comes easy to us, in the beginning, if it's a good thing, we say, great, didn't have to work too hard for it, it's wonderful, wonderful. But after a while, when you look back on your life, what are the things you value the most? What are the experiences? What are even the physical things you value the most? The ones that were just kind of handed to you, or the ones that you had to make an effort, especially to achieve something? Which was more fulfilling? The things you have to make an effort. So too, we understand the Bibles are written in code, various levels of code, that we have to work through. We have to, as our spiritual work is, what's the difference between a spiritual person and a non-spiritual person? In a very simple level, the spiritual person is one who's perceiving on a spiritual / non-physical level, and the not spiritual is only seeing from the five senses. So then in the same way, the Zohar explains, if a person's only reading the Bible on its literal level, take it up with Rabbi Shimon, but I'm going to tell you what he says. Basically, that person is a fool. Because the Bible is so much, or the Zohar is so much more. The Bible has so much more deep, but you got to see through it. That's the purpose of the Zohar, to see through. Not just to believe, like we're saying, on the literal level, you can't. Contradicts itself hundreds of times. Thou shalt not murder, and then being commanded to go murder. Which do you accept? So like most of us, which would we accept? Whatever our mood in the moment. If we're angry at somebody, as we might often say, I could just kill them. Right? If you really love somebody, you say, oh, I want to hug and protect them. So our mood would decide. But the Bible's saying both, either way. So then we have to make the effort spiritually to grow beyond our five senses, to be able to see more and more and more of the message that comes through the Bibles. Or, like you and I are doing, we have come to the point where we've gone through various things. Maybe we've just been discouraged with reading the Bible. Didn't make sense to us. And the way people explain it, this one with their perspective and this one with their perspective, and seemingly almost not just difference of opinion, but history shows us a lot of violence brought about by differences of opinion of how to interpret the Bible. Not leading us towards love your neighbor as yourself, and there's no way, it is impossible, will never happen, that all humanity will turn to be the same. Not while we're on this earth. There'll be black, white, yellow, brown, Jew, Christian, Muslim, Buddhist, Hindu, whatever, even atheists, scientists, lawyers, doctors. There'll be all these different things, variety, because humanity's soul is the same, but how we express it is unique, So just quickly, the Zohar, if you go back in its written form, and here and there you may have heard me say this, because I was pre-med years and years back. So the Zohar in its written form is 2,000 years old. It was channeled, downloaded, automatic writing, whichever form you want to understand, by a gentleman called Rav Shimon Bar Yochai, 2,000 years ago. 2,000 years ago, what did the scientists think the shape of the earth was? Flat, right? Then we came suddenly to realize it's round. So I guess God decided flat wasn't good enough, or maybe God just took the earth out of the box, right? And it was flat, it hadn't been inflated, so then he inflated it and suddenly it became round. Right? No, okay. The Zohar talks about not only that the earth is a round ball rolling in space, so sometimes it's dark on one side and light on the other, things like that. Also talks about quantum physics, talks about computer science, talks about all forms of medicine and all the spiritual and physical functions and energies of the parts of the body. One of my favorite, simple thing, in the 70s when I was in pre-med studies, cholesterol came on the scene as the devil because too much cholesterol could kill people. Then a little more scientific exploration and they found out there was good and bad cholesterol. Well, 2,000 years ago in the Zohar, in its written form, forget in its original oral form, 2,000 years ago in its written form, it already spoke about good and bad cholesterol. And that bad cholesterol could harden the arteries of people and kill them. So again, I'm just pointing that out to understand. The Zohar comes from, it's the wisdom of the endless world and the original blueprint of this world. The Bibles are various expressions of, pieces of that original blueprint. Meant for what? Again, if you're a parent, think of your kids. You want your children to succeed, be happy in life, successful in life, good people. But they each have talents and abilities. So one may go through, science and medicine. One might just be an entrepreneur. One might just be, an athlete. One might be a botanist, gardening, whatever it is. Each one will have their own talents. One might be a better writer. So you give them success by enhancing and revealing their God-given talent, even though they're different. One is math, one is science, one is whatever, reading, English, etc. So too, the Bibles are in essence that. They are given to, if you will, groups of souls, right, from the one soul, so that they would be able to understand the message of the Zohar, but through their language, if you will, through their spiritual energy frequency. But as you come to learn in the center, and I've been doing this for almost 35 years now, invariably as people study the Zohar and understand what we're learning, as we teach Kabbalah 1, 2, 3, wow, suddenly I understand what the Bible I grew up with means. I understand what the rabbi, priest, minister, imam, whatever was saying, and I can see that similarity in all the Bibles. Because remember, it's one message, if you will, just put out in different codes. But the message of the code is the same. Boils down to that love your neighbor as yourself, or we read by Michael Berg, how can I serve other people? How can I care for other people? Not just throw judgmental truth at them. Oh, you're sick? What did you do? What was wrong with you? What were you? No, it doesn't help. As he says, it doesn't help. It's not caring. And remember, they're a part of us. So what goes out of us comes back to us. So we have to be more loving and kind, and we have to be more supportive. So the Zohar is giving us that weight about it. Now, just to go briefly, took me a couple years in the center to actually think of the question, because I, having studied so many different things, I just accepted as truth certain things. But then, as more and more people were asking me questions, I realized like this. One soul, this one being, split into Adam and Eve. So let's start with Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. Did you ever ask yourself the question what language they spoke? Yeah, one crazy person here. No, I grew up reading the Bible in English. If you had asked me, nobody asked me, I didn't think about it, but if you asked me, I would have probably said, they must have spoke English, because that's the way I read the Bible. If you grew up in France and you read the Bible in French, and I asked you back then, you probably said the same, oh, they spoke French. But you and I have come now with a bigger picture of things, spiritual evolution, to ask the question. The language they spoke would have had to be in the frequency of verbal vibration from the soul, from the light of God inside. And that would be the one soul language of every human being. And the Kabbalists explain, and there are many other teachings that do. It's not the platform to go into all of it, but research for yourself. It was what we would call Hebrew or Aramaic, was the language of Adam and Eve. So that means the language of the soul is fundamentally based on those, as we call them, light force particles called the Hebrew letters. So the Hebrew letters are not a language per se. They're like photons. The science background, that's the way I like to describe it. Photons of the light of the Creator. The same way a photon is a particle of physical light, the Hebrew letters are a conduit of certain unique vibrations of the light of God. And therefore, the language of your soul, my soul, whatever our religion, background, language, culture, whatever, the language or the vibration of our soul is based on those things we call the Hebrew letters. That's why the Zohar is written in those Hebrew letters in the construct called Aramaic. So you can look it up on YouTube, or look it up on, Google. Look up something called resonance. Resonance is just another way of saying like attracts like. It's interesting. We were just talking about that. Why the different Bibles and different, terms and this and this and this. Like this, resonance and the idea of like attracts like, same message. Two things that are similar will be close. Two things that are dissimilar will be far. So resonance in physics, what does it say? If you take two tuning forks of the same frequency and you keep them physically distant, but you activate one, the other one will start to activate also, because there's a resonance, a similarity, if you will, because they're both the same frequency. So activating one will cause the other one to also make its same sound. So as we're coming now to get it, this is why the mission of the Kabbalah Center, spread the Zohar all around the world, because the way it's constructed, it radiates the infinite light of God, just the books themselves. Now, those of you who have been studying in the center, there's something we call scanning. And the Rav Berg and Karen Berg always talked about it like your grocery store. Anyone here still go to the grocery store? Or you remember the days when you used to go shopping? So when you check out your groceries, what did they do? They had a computer with an eye that was connected to the computer. And what did they do? They take something like this, these barcodes, and they'd scan it across the computer eye. And because the computer was programmed to recognize it, it would activate. They give you the price. It would help the store have, inventory and this and this and this. So what about the eye of God on us? What about our eyes? And we say, eyes are the window to the soul. So when you open up the Zohar and you scan the Aramaic, remembering that God programmed every human soul with its perfection, then as you're scanning, you're activating the light of God inside of us. Just having the Zohar around, which as many of you know, we always remind people, if you don't have at least this that you keep in your pocket, your purse, or your car, get one. Even just the presence of it, as that first verse we read from Naso, the book of the Zohar is the tree of life, which means it's radiating the light of unconditional love, peace, harmony, joy, the light that will awaken the perfection that's already inside of us. So this is why it's so important spreading the Zohar around the world. So I hear some of you are newer to this, you say, well, what's that going to do? You put books all over the world, big deal. So I like this. I came up with this a couple years ago because one of the students in the center was asking me, is it really just the book? She'd been learning for a while. She'd had miracles and this. But as we grow, we also come to certain questions, almost like a certain doubt. Is it really that way? I'm not sure. Is it this? Okay. Doubts are also okay as you grow through them. So she says, is it really about the books? So we happen to be in a space, and that's what clicked for me. So imagine now you're in an auditorium, right? You're on one side of the auditorium, and you see that people have scattered all over the auditorium floor, chairs, whatever, obstacles, things in the way, obstacle course, so to speak. Now, you're on the one side, and across the auditorium, there's another door, the finish line, if you will. So somebody, not you guys, but think of that. Somebody comes to the person there and says, you know what? Puts a gun to their head and says, you have 10 seconds to get across the room, and then shuts the lights out. They saw there's obstacles, yes? They know they got to rush across the room. How do you think they're feeling? Pretty bad, right? You can imagine in your head, scared, fearful, nervous, anxious, the stomach tightening up, all the muscles going, etc., etc. Why? Because in the dark, they know there's an obstacles, there is an immediacy, an urgency to get across there, and they're worried about falling over the chairs, getting hit, hurting themselves, etc., etc. Of course, we would all be. Now, all of a sudden, somebody turns on the light. There's still an urgency to run across the room to the other side. What happened to all the torment and the torture that was going on inside the person now that the lights are on? Worse or less? Why is it less? Nothing changed. They still have to urgently run across the room. There's still obstacles in the room. Why should they feel any better? Oh, because now there's illumination. Now they see their way. They still have to go through the obstacle course, yes. But when the light is on, it's a lot easier to navigate without being harmed. So in one level, that's it. You spread enough Zohar, understanding it's like a stadium spotlight, 1 billion times stronger. So it's shining light. So when you and I are saying, as we asked in the beginning, do you have any confusion? Do you have any discouragement about the world? Do you have any challenges in life? Do you feel that you have obstacles? So why is there so much inner stress? Because you can't see how you're going to go through the obstacles and get on the other side, how you're going to end up with joy and happiness. But as you turn on the light of the Zohar, the light of the Creator, and it starts to awaken the light inside you, it's like within your own personal auditorium, the light goes on. Now when you look out and you see these obstacles and you see the challenges, etc., suddenly you have also the voice of the Creator in your head and also the vision of the Creator. This is how you go about handling this situation. This is how you deal with that person. This is how you move through that situation and those circumstances. This is how you overcome your 5 senses to start realizing, yes, there's a reason that your soul allowed you to be there so you could see one thing at least that's blocking you from allowing that perfection of God, your blessings of peace, love, prosperity, protection, all those things, one thing at least that's blocking that light from shining in your life. That's the power of the Zohar. Now, what do you do with others? What do you do about all the negative people in the world? Right? And some people even define evil people. I like to think, Kabbalistically, if there's only one God, we're all parts of God, and God created that one soul of which we are all extensions. We don't have our own unique soul. We're part of that one being, that one soul that was created in the endless world that showed up in this world, then divided, or if you will, extended into 8 billion people. So what about those people who are behaving like you and I? You and I do it on a minor level. No? Everybody here just smiley, peaceful, happy, joyous, kind, loving all the time? Or you have a little impatience, especially driving. Right? Oh, right away you're throwing daggers at that person for whatever they did. So now imagine that. Oh, even that idea. You know, that's saying, oh, throwing daggers with your eyes. Okay, but if you expand it out to people who are less spiritually evolved, meaning they haven't come to the awareness. We're all perfectly spiritual beings inside because that's what God made us. Our job is to remove the blockages and let more and more of it shine. So people who are completely blocked, they got hundreds and hundreds of shells blocking their light, they could be doing actual daggers. They could actually be shooting somebody else with a similar frustration we had that we're looking at them with daggers. There are people out there just actually doing daggers. Same essence, just one is less intense and one is more intense, but it's still not bringing the light of the Creator into the world, taking away the darkness. So then what's going to happen to those people? How do you get rid of them? Again, stupidly, even though we say with our mouth, you learn history so you don't repeat it, but if you really look back, we've been repeating history for 5,782 Kabbalistic years. Same thing. Let's get rid of the bad people. So we get rid of the bad people. Another group of bad people show up. And we get rid of them and another group shows up. Hello? How many of us are trying to get rid of the bad people out of our own life? And they're not even evil, doing evil bad things. They're just annoying us. You get rid of one over here, it's almost like the ocean. Then another one comes from the other side. Right? You get out of that relationship because they're XYZ. All of a sudden you meet a new person, a new body. They may look and act a little different and then they become the same person in the end that you just got rid of. You leave a job because people are stupid. You get another job, at first it looks really great, and then after 2 months they're all stupid again. So we've seen our own repetitive patterns. No less history of 8 billion people. So the power of spreading the Zohar, remember, you have to keep in mind, the Zohar just radiates the light of God, like a light bulb, stadium light in that frame. The trouble is, what does a parasite in our brain tell us? It's a book. It's not a book. It's a conduit of light, if you will, in simple terms, a radiator of the light of God. Put enough of those around, as it's happened to you and me, when you're dedicated in the center to growing spiritually, and you're scanning the Zohar a few times a day. What starts to happen? Your soul wakes up. What happens when the soul wakes up? You start to think about, oh my God, I mistreated that person. I judged that one. I was a little greedy over there. I was a little egotistical over there. Why? Because as you turn on light, you see your garbage. You ever tried to clean your house when it's completely dark? You know there's trash on the floor. You know there's dirty dishes. But in the complete darkness, you can't see them. So what is the opponent in this metaphor? I guess somebody else cleaned the house. Because in the dark, I can imagine it's clean. Somebody comes along, turns the light out, turns the light on. Suddenly I see the dirt on the floor and the dishes in the sink. Can we really say the light bulb caused the dirty dishes? The light bulb made the dirt on the floor? No, it was there all the time. I just didn't see it. So as you and I are using the Zohar and awakening that light, now we can distinguish our light behavior and our reactive behavior. Now imagine when there's enough bright light of God, because we spread enough of the books of the Zohar, that even people who are so blinded, so caught in so many shells, that the pure light of God that's inside is not shining out just enough to keep them physically alive. Remember resonance, like attracts like? So the light that radiates from the Zohar will penetrate directly to their heart and soul. Not even those shells can stop the light from reaching in, awakening the light of God inside them. And now like you and I, when you and I have enough inner turmoil, and that inner turmoil is extremely painful, then we will do something to stop that pain. We will go act with a little more love and kindness and gratitude and humility and forgiveness and compassion. When there's enough light shining, then even people who are caught up in doing evil, destructive things, they still have the material of God inside them. They're still in the image and likeness of God. They're just not acting it, which is our free will. Don't blame them. We all have free will. You wake up the light inside, they will begin to have a sense of inner turmoil. And when that inner turmoil is strong enough, they will also change their evil behavior to love, kindness, and compassion. They will also get themselves out of the darkness because we'll have turned up enough light that even in, quote, bad vision, the light will be so bright that they will see it. That's how we stop all the chaos. That's how you remove negative people, by transformation, awakening the light inside them. So I just want to give you, took a little more time, just a couple quick stories about the power of the Zohar. And again, you could believe or not believe. At some point, we really have to ask ourselves, what are we going to do to change the world? Because it doesn't look like we're really going in that kind of direction. A lot of spiritual awakening happening, so there is momentum that way. The power of the center is to speed it up. So I'll give you way back in history, the history that I'm familiar with. The Zohar, just that you'll know this, the Zohar wrote 2,000 years ago, in the last days, before all the chaos gets removed and the light is complete in the universe, the sources of chaos, some of the main sources, areas of chaos, will be basically the Middle East, Iran, Iraq, sort of in that area, and China. So just before I came to the center in 1987, the Rav, knowing that that's what the Zohar says, had made an effort, and go back in history so you'll figure out how powerful this really is, made an effort literally to smuggle 151 boxes, 23 volume sets of Zohar, 151 of them, into Tehran. We got it there. But of course, at that time, when it was under all this whatever, they basically confiscated it. They put it in a warehouse, customs warehouse, let's say, just around the airport of Tehran. Stayed there. Won't give you all the details. You look up, it was about 1989, biggest earthquake in the history of Iran. I saw personally the son of the Shah who had been exiled. The son came with one of his, I don't know, whatever you call him, minister of the interior or geologist. He came to New York and he showed us on a map, he showed us the fault line. The fault line runs right through the city of Tehran, 10 million people. The Zohar, he showed us where the Zohar sat, right? Just outside the city limits. And he showed us how the earthquake came, followed the fault line till just about where the Zohar was, split around the city of Tehran, and then came back together and went on. So there's virtually no destruction, but the biggest earthquake in history. Also, study history a little bit. The Zohar says when there's such a thing like that, it represents a change of government. There was a change of government. We were able then to ship in about 4,000 sets of Zohar at that time. We were given permission to send it there. Things have been changing, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, it's big national. Just because the time is going, I want to cut to maybe a little easier for us to relate with. So there was a couple, some people in one of the centers, Florida, and you notice there haven't been really destructive ground-touching or land-reaching hurricanes in Florida since about 2005. Why? Because the centers of Boca and Miami spread Zohar all over the coasts, from all the way up northern Florida, all the way down, circling it as a shield of protection. If light shines out of the Zohar, then it would be protection against the hurricanes. And you ask, never happened in history, but it's now a world's record. Okay, so I'll just tell you this one story. There was a family in Israel was studying in the center in Israel, and the mother was a little more ahead of the rest of them. So she put a Zohar in the house, and she wanted everybody to carry a pocket Zohar. Some of them yes, some of them no. Then started these suicide bombings. So they had a son who was, riding on a bus to school every day. They didn't want him to ride on the bus, so the mother made sure that he didn't have to ride on a bus. They got him a motor scooter so he could go. You're following with me? So one day apparently was, rain, heavy rain or whatever it was, so they sent him on a bus. He's got a Zohar in his pocket. Sadly, that bus was blown up. He was the only survivor. He told the story, right, with a Zohar in his pocket. He says just at that moment of the explosion, he felt like somebody had picked him up, took him out of the bus, exploded, and then put him back in his seat. So from that point forward, all the rest of the family, they were reading the Zohar every day. They were scanning. They started to take classes. I mean, hello, what do you do? It's obvious. And you go right down the line, all these stories are similar to that. Okay. The most personal and the first story of the power of the Zohar for me was the first year I was in the center as a teacher. I moved to New York January 1988. My father was in California. He was 70, almost 71 at that time. He calls me up. He says he had developed a brain virus and he had to go in for surgery. And he's telling me this because he says the doctors tell him less than 10% chance of surviving. And of course, within that 10%, his brain surgery, he's 70, 71, he may have side effects, disabilities from it. So I tell him, okay, you have to buy a Zohar. And you take the healing book, which is not in this. We didn't have the English version at that time. At that time, it was Aramaic and Hebrew. So it wasn't even anything he could read. So I said, you buy the Zohar, you take volume 15, which is Pinchas, for those who are familiar. You take that into the operating room with you, and that radiates the light of God, wakes up your soul, will help guide the doctors, et cetera, there. So he bought the Zohar, which for me was, between you and me, it was kind of the first miracle that he actually was willing to buy a Zohar. So he went in, he came out of the surgery. Within 2 months, he was healing, almost completely healed, faster than the doctors ever expected. He had no side effects. After about 8 months, almost a year, he went back to school, got his PhD in hypnotherapy. He went back to playing tennis. active like nothing had happened, and extended his life every day from that point forward. He was scanning from the Zohar at least twice a day, extended his life till he passed in 2005. So about 17, 18 years. So for me, everything else is icing on the cake. The fact that it was so clear that the Zohar, in fact, when he came to New York to visit, and he was going to sleep, he took the book of the Zohar, right, which I hadn't told him to do. He put it under his pillow on the bed. I said, Dad, why are you doing that? He says, well, I've been healing with this book. You told me it's the book of healing. This is where I need it, and that's where I'm keeping it. So just to understand, I can tell you personal miracles, but there's no time. What I want to get, the bottom line is, the point is, when do we want heaven on earth? If you really think about it, the Kabbalists, again, believe it or not, ask, study, by the Kabbalistic year 6000 has to be heaven on earth. Everybody has to be loving, kind, and compassionate to everybody else. We're in the year 5782. So if you want to look at it that way, we have 218 years to go. But the purpose of the center, by spreading the Zohar, is to speed up the process. Make heaven on earth now. As we've been saying, you turn on the light inside of us, activate the light inside of us, speeds up the process. So, there's a nice story, some of you may have heard it. What's the difference between heaven and hell? So the story kind of goes briefly, this man is sort of in between, he's not sure, so he's shown hell. So he goes into hell and he sees people around this huge pot of the most delicious food ever, but they have on both arms, they're strapped like with 10-foot poles, spoons. And so they're trying to dip into this thing and throw it in the air and eat it and this and this and this. And they're tormented because they can't get anything, because they can't bend their arm to eat. They got 10-foot poles. Okay, he feels the pain. Now they show him heaven. Walk into heaven. Now he sees people, coming out of heaven, and they look like they've been fed. They're not emaciated like the people who were, in hell. But they also have those 10-foot poles, and there's the same bowl of this delicious soup. What's the difference? In heaven, each one was dipping their spoon in and feeding the other person. So the difference is not anything really big externally. The difference is, how are we serving other people? So as we come to understand, the power of the Zohar is to awaken God inside of us. And as we understand God in the Kabbalah Center, it's about sharing. It's the ultimate light force of sharing. And so you want to start revealing heaven on earth. This is the way we're going to do it. You spread enough Zohar, wake up the souls, you and I speeding up the process, because we're also scanning and doing, and we're helping to spread the Zohar. We speed up the process, we draw humanity into the point where so many Zohars on earth that there's only the light of God. The darkness disappears, and when the darkness disappears, we see with our own eyes. What I do to you comes right back to me. We see with our own eyes that the light of God in me is the same light of God in you. And we see, most importantly, that there is a connection, like we're almost roped together, if you will, on a spiritual level, that nobody can escape impact from everybody else. So the faster we turn on the light, the faster we remove the darkness, then every human being will have that awakening and transformation from being self-centered to sharing. And the more of us share love, kindness, compassion, see the peace and unity, that is what heaven on earth is made up of. And may it be in this year 5782, with our help, with our work, with our effort, spreading the Zohar and awakening people to this wisdom to come to understand the Zohar. May it happen in our time. God bless. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so as we do every week, and now perhaps you understand a little bit more why it's important to us, this time, and why the center does actually, collect money. Whoops. Uh-oh. 1 second. Okay, let me get this. Oh. I'm going to put the giving site for those of you who are watching online. Okay. and then we're going to do our meditation. So those of you who are here, just, there we go. Okay, hold your offering in your hands, close your eyes. We know that what we inject inside this money, which is a vessel, what we inject inside is what it will do for us as it returns reflected by the cosmos, and what it will do for other people. So we're injecting our love, our light, our blessing, our gratitude for all that the Creator has given us, the capabilities, the talents, the strength, the awareness, and even grateful for the challenges which have allowed us to see how we block ourselves, how we are not behaving the way the Creator gave us power to behave. And so through these challenges, we've come to the strength of unblocking ourselves through transformational sharing, extending the light to become more peaceful, to feel more blessed, and have a greater desire and inner urge to serve others, to embrace others in a sphere of love and light, compassion, unity, and peace. And so we inject our love and our blessings, that this gift go through the projects of the center to bring so many Zohars on earth, that the light is the only force in this universe that awakens the light of God inside each person, removing completely that parasite called the opponent that has taunted humanity from the beginning of time to be fragmented, divisive, discordant with each other. We remove that empty space, fill it with light, love, and unity. And we say, Amen. Amen. So those of you who are online, thank you for joining us. Please let me know about your miracles. Let me know the things that have happened, and even your questions. I'd love to, hear your questions and be able to answer them. Have a great...
Thank you for joining us. If you liked what you saw, subscribe to this channel that you'll be notified when we post new videos. Share the video with your friends, they can also benefit. And check out the website, www.kabbalah.com, that's Kabbalah, for hundreds of articles and classes. Wish you an amazing day, and God bless.